Sunny ways, my friends, sunny ways. This is what positive politics can do.
Well, I think we all know what the topic is for tonight, so let's waste no time. Andrew is here in Toronto, Chantal is in Montreal, and Bruce is in Calgary tonight. All of us living under sunny ways now. The Wilfrid Laurier quote that Justin Trudeau used on Monday night. We've all had the opportunity to go through the Monday night results and kind of sort of think about them and think about what actually happened that night. Beyond what you said on that evening, what have you learned about that night later that actually may tell you something new about what was going on there? Andrew.
I think there's a lot of good news, I guess I would put it that way, for whatever your partisan stripe for Canadian democracy in these results. I mean, turnout was up, of course, by about 8 points. More women, more minorities elected than ever before. And I think most importantly, perhaps, we have contestable politics, if I can put it that way, across much of the country. We said on election night, I think we said this is back to 1980, but it really isn't quite. Remember in 1980, I think there was one Conservative in Quebec, there was two Liberals in Western Canada. That's not what happened this time. We've got, the Conservatives were defeated, but they weren't decimated. The Liberals have support across the country. They have support in every, MPs in every province. And the Conservatives in Quebec, I think, have 12 seats rather than the 5 last time. They have 33 seats still in Ontario, so they can build from that. So we don't have the stark divisions quite as much as we had in the past, and we've got 3-way, 4-way races in our 3 biggest provinces. That's good. That means you can't really take one region or one province for granted. You've got to fight for every vote. That's good for democracy.
Chantal.
2 things. How Quebecers, to what degree they invested themselves in federalist parties. The Bloc Québécois didn't have a great night. Gilles Duceppe, as you know, resigned again today. It was kind of a back to the future moment for the Bloc Québécois. But when you look at the results, it's not just that Quebec split 4 ways, which is unprecedented, but that the Bloc's reason for going to Ottawa is to defend Quebec interest. The majority of Quebec MPs are in the government, but beyond that, there are more Conservative MPs from Quebec and more New Democrat MPs from Quebec than there are Bloc Québécois MPs, and that, I suspect, puts the existential crisis that the sovereignty movement is in into a new, worse phase.
Bruce.
Well, a few quick things, Peter, from my standpoint. Recalling all of the effort that the Conservatives put into targeting specific subgroups within the population, the data apparently indicate that the oldest ridings, the ridings that have the most families with children, and the most densely immigrant populated ridings all tended to vote Liberal rather than Conservative. And I think that really speaks to this. The value of micro-targeting is obviously there, but only if the overarching message and values of the party are consonant with the interests of the population that they're trying to reach. And so that's a lesson, I think, for leadership aspirants. I was also struck by the fact that we've had almost an epidemic of risk aversion among politicians in recent years. A lot of them use polls to find out how to avoid trouble. And 2 of the parties that had relatively risk-free platforms, the NDP and the Conservatives, didn't fare that well, whereas Mr. Trudeau, who was widely criticized for controversial positions that he happened to believe in on, like legalizing marijuana, he took some policy risks and he was rewarded. So maybe that'll be a signal to the to politicians going forward that sometimes taking a risk will deliver some benefits, and avoiding risk would actually be counterproductive politically.
Let me pick up a little bit on Andrew's point that this was a good night for democracy. That we saw a lot of things happen that night that are good for the system. Do you really expect, Andrew, that we're going to sort of march into a new parliament, but that we're going to see a kind of a new level of parliamentary behavior, parliamentary access for the various parties towards debate and discussion?
We may. Hope springs eternal. I think, certainly, I think a lot of people are absorbing one of the lessons from this election being that nasty doesn't necessarily work, that attack ads don't necessarily work. that there's sometimes a price to be paid for that, and that's to the good. I think the Conservatives, if they're sensible, will try to adjust their tone. They'll obviously take some time to find a new leader and all that kind of thing. But I think at least for a time, there's hope for that. I'm going to be very interested, I must say, and I don't like to be negative, but projecting down the road 4 years when the Liberals come back for re-election, it'll be interesting to see whether they can maintain the same positive tone they did when they were running as the challengers. That, I think, will be the real test, is can you still maintain that positive tone when you're fighting off a challenge? And I guess we'll find out then.
Bruce?
Well, as you know, Peter, I'm always an optimist about these things, sometimes to my regret after a while. But I do think that the Liberal campaign, to some degree the NDP campaign at various points anyway, all spoke to a common sense that there needed to be a change in the tone. And I was listening intently to Mr. Trudeau's comments the other day when he talked about wanting to make sure that he listened to the other 337 MPs that would be in the House of Commons. It was almost like he was saying, I hear voters saying our system doesn't work, and one of those things is inattentiveness. And by that token, I just wanted to raise one other thing, which is Mr. Harper's comments on the night of the election struck me as unhelpful for his party in two ways. First of all, he really he telescoped down the accomplishments of that Conservative government that he led to reducing taxes, which is not insignificant, obviously, for people, but there were more things that he could have said that were policy accomplishments. And second, when you lose an election, it's usually a good thing for your party if you signal back to voters that you got some sort of message out of it, rather than you didn't pick us this time, but we did good things for you. And so I think that was a message for the Conservatives to take away as well.
Let me pick up on the Conservative thread here in terms of looking into the future, because as we saw in Catherine Cullen's item during the newscast, you know, the talk of leadership contests are already on and a bunch of names are out there. Let me show you a tweet from Michelle Rempel. She was pretty active on Twitter last night. There were a lot of tweets from her, and it's all surrounding this issue of leadership. And some people trying to get her into it. She says, just not ready is no longer an argument. Times have changed. What do we make of this sort of early out of the gate on the part of some Conservatives and the potential that they may run? Chantal?
I think it's healthy. I think she was challenging a number of cliches, including the fact that, you know, she's young and she's a woman. She's too spontaneous. I read that thread. I found it really interesting. I'm not sure that future leadership races should reward inexperience suddenly. You still have to show that you are who you are, but it would make for a more interesting Conservative conversation if a lot of people like that joined it.
Andrew?
It's healthy, I guess, that the party does have this no shortage of leaders. That shows that people feel that it's worthwhile, that they don't think they're going to be spending 20 years in opposition or anything like that. So again, contestable politics helps to bring out you know, those kinds of candidates. I think it's going to be the leadership race, as they often are, is going to be a proxy for where is this party going, what does it stand for, what lessons can we learn from the past few years and from our defeat. And I hope they have a very open and frank discussion about it. I hope it's not, it doesn't look like it's going to be a coronation for anybody, that's for sure. So I think there's a real opportunity here for the party. I know people are worried that with Harper, with the founder of the party, as it were, gone, that there's going to be opening up all these divisions within the party. I think you just have to take that chance. If you don't have the kind of really serious discussion, then the leadership race will have been a waste.
Let me show you a short clip of a Justin Trudeau moment that I had with the now future Prime Minister 2 years ago, the day after he became leader. I showed him a clip that his father had said on the day his father became Prime Minister. He said he hadn't seen it. Watch this. It's about advice. You got to see this quote, because it kind of, this little clip, because it kind of fits.
You know, this kind of popularity is easily lost, perhaps easily won. Easy come, easy go. And I think, like most people who get to be known by the television, they can be chewed up pretty quickly by the medium. Pour vu que ça dure, as Napoleon's mother used to say. It'll last a while, we'll have a chance to, I think, change a bit in politics. Some good laws.
Well, there's
get a new generation enthusiastic about politics.
Sound familiar?
Well, you know what? I've never seen that, but it is touching. It's the values that he raised me with. It's the values he lived with, and it's the values that I'm trying to pass on to my kids. And you know, if life, hands you an opportunity to make a difference, well, you better try and do what you can with it while you have it.
Fame can be fleeting. In terms of advice, what's your one line of advice here, Chantal, for a new leader, a new prime minister? You've watched enough of these come and go.
Yes, and I would take the lesson not from this Pierre Trudeau clip, but from his parting speech at the convention where they picked his successor, where he encouraged Liberals and his successor to continue to speak over the head of pundits and the media, to speak to real people, which I think the Liberals did in this campaign, and which is useful advice not only to a Liberal Prime Minister, but I guess to any politician to keep that connection and not isolate oneself in the bunker of the Ottawa bubble.
Bruce?
Well, I found it very interesting to watch that clip, and I remember Pierre Trudeau when he was Prime Minister, and what I took away from it was a combination of remembering what Pierre Trudeau was like and also knowing what, in my mind anyway, was essential to the victory of Justin Trudeau. And it's really three things. Be true to yourself. Be who you are. Canadians really understand authenticity when they see it, and they'll decide for themselves whether the authentic you is one that they like well enough or not. The second thing is be humble, and the third thing is show that you're willing to work to improve. I'm not sure that Pierre Trudeau really exemplified those last two characteristics, but it does seem to me that Justin Trudeau succeeded in significant measure because he was who he appeared to be. He looked like he was willing to work hard to improve, and he had a humility to him even as people were attacking him that I think people found a little bit disarming.
Andrew?
I guess the overarching thing is political capital isn't much use unless you invest it. I mean, he talked about popularity, and that sometimes translates into long-term political capital, support over a long period of time. But if that's all you do, if it's all you do is want to be popular, you're not really going to achieve very much. The prime ministers who've gone down in history are the ones who were able to pick their spots. It's going to be a short list of big things you're going to be able to accomplish. But if you're not willing to risk your popularity and risk your political capital in doing that, then you're not going to achieve very much.
Last point tonight is the one thing about elections, some people win, some people lose. Some MPs who have been there for a while lose, new ones come in. And friendships, are, as a result of that, between people on different sides of the aisle are faced with a bit of a crisis when they lose those friends. And there was a wonderful moment on Rosie Barton's Power and Politics show today. Lisa Raitt, Conservative Cabinet Minister, Megan Leslie, NDP Deputy Leader. They were at each other in question period, but they're also friends. And they did a number of things outside of politics together, including singing together a lot. Watch this little compilation right here.
They say we're young and we don't know the economy or how to make one grow. They say we're mean and not always fair. That may be true, but honestly, I don't care.
Megan Leslie was not only my partner in crime when it came to great hosting gigs, both singing and in comedy. She was an excellent parliamentarian who cared deeply about the environment, also cared about women's issues. We got to know each other through Equal Voice. We became friends through our love of comedy and music. And I wish her all the best in her future endeavors. And I'm sure that they are going to be great, but most importantly, they're going to be good.
Rosie, that was totally unfair. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, nice moment. But I think it's a good lesson for all of us that, there are friendships that develop there. We always see the heat of fire, and often we don't realize that there are other things that happen in that place as well. Bruce, you've seen a lot of that over time.
I have, and those are two of the finest people in the last Parliament. It's a shame that Megan Leslie won't be back. There are others I could name as well, Andrew Cash. And I saw a number of those people come together around different charitable initiatives like the one that we talked about on this show before. There have been in the past too few of those relationships developed, and so I'm delighted that we're showcasing the fact that that can happen so that some of the 200 plus new MPs coming to Ottawa in the next little while can see that and say, maybe maybe that's the example to be looking for. We can compete aggressively with each other over ideas, but it doesn't have to be personal. In fact, you can have good personal relationships too.
Quick last word on that point, Chantal.
I guess for people who aren't familiar with Parliament Hill, and those of us who cover it know that, everyone in Parliament makes a Parliament good. It doesn't matter that they're in government or in opposition. It wouldn't be a good Parliament if they weren't all there. And that is why a lot of people are sorry when they see MPs go from every party, because no party has a monopoly on good MPs.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you all. It's been quite the week. Andrew here in Toronto, Chantal in Montreal, Bruce in Calgary tonight.